Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 5, episode 18. My name's Adilabah, and I have misophonia. I am so excited to finally bring out this conversation I had a few months ago with Jeffrey Scott Gould. You may already know the name if you've seen the documentary Quiet Please, which you can see streaming on places like iTunes and Amazon Prime, or order the DVD at quietpleasefilm.com. Don't worry, I'll have links in the show notes. The film did a lot to raise awareness for misophonia and help people with misophonia understand what they're feeling, and most importantly, that they're not alone. So in this conversation, we talk about why Jeffrey made the documentary, how he decided what to put in the film, the reactions from misophones, dealing with haters, and of course his own life story, his coping tips, and what he's been up to since. This was every bit as awesome as I was hoping, and actually even exceeded that. I'll be tagging Jeffrey and the film's social media accounts when I post this episode. So just a reminder to please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Misophonia Podcast, so you can share it as well and get the word out about Quiet Please, and of course this podcast. It's the easiest way to raise awareness. You can also hit the 5 stars on your podcast app to work the Apple and Spotify algorithms and get this in front of more people. All right, this is, I think, one of the few times Jeffrey has done an interview with another misophone, so it's a special one. Here is my conversation with Jeffrey Scott Gould. Jeffrey, welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this, and I think a lot of listeners are looking forward to this as well.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've done probably 10 interviews since the inception of the film, and each one has a little, different twist, based on the host, different personalities, but I like that because each one draws out something different from me, and I like that when it's just an organic talk.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe for people who don't know, would you like to kind of talk a little bit about? I usually ask a little bit about whereabouts are you and what you do.
So actually, when I made the film, I lived in New Jersey and had my own video production company there for about 30 years. And then when I found out, like everybody, like most other people found out watching 2020, that episode that changed many lives.
Yeah.
It was actually a friend that called me up and she said, I know what you have.
Was that before the New York Times article, or I feel like I get that timeline always messed up?
Yeah, I need to check the timeline too.
It
may be, yeah, but 2020 is what really exploded it, because Kelly Ripa was on that episode,
right? And
Josh Furness, who actually ended up being in the film and who I actually got to meet. I actually refer to him as my misophonia hero, because the day my friend told me, like, she goes, I know what you have. I go, what thing? She goes, that sound thing. And I go, what are you talking about? She goes, how you don't like certain sounds? She goes, it's called misophonia, and it means hatred of sound. And it was like an epiphany moment.
Yeah. And
I ran home and right to Google, and I saw Josh's little 3-minute video that kind of depicted what it's like to go through it. And it resonated so much. I had goosebumps all over. And I was like, at first I was like, I'm going to do a documentary. And then I saw his 3-minute short. And I was like, he got it. I don't have to do that. And I also saw, I think Tom Dozier's. He had a couple of videos up there.
Right.
And then I saw a clip from 2020. And that was kind of revelatory when I saw that, because it's just so nice to be validated. Imagine going 50 years of your life knowing you have this thing, but not knowing it was a real thing. It wasn't just a personality quirk.
Right.
It was something real that other people, and throughout my life, I met a couple of people, like my ex-boss. We were just talking. He goes, I hate crunching and chewing. I once dated somebody. They said, crunching and chewing bothers me. But I never put 2 and 2 together that it could be a thing. So you go, okay, we just have similar, personality quirks or whatever. never really put it together. Um, so I decided, so it took about a year and a half, and I was having lunch with a composer friend in New York City. And she goes, "So, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?" I said, "Great question." I said, "I want to make a documentary, but it has to be about misophonia or chocolate, because those are the two things that I'm most passionate about."
Okay, that explains is my next, well, my later question about where did the chocolate documentary come from after Misophonia. Now it's starting to make sense.
It's funny. Right. Right. It is funny. So that day was actually like December, I think it was 13th, 2014.
Mm,
And then actually on January 1st, the following year, like 2014, I actually started a document called Misophonia Notes. And I
mm,
just started collecting thoughts and making a list using Microsoft OneNote and just making a list of everything that I would like to include in it. And by February, I think it was February 13th actually, I went on Facebook into all the misophonia support groups. And I said, would anybody be interested in a documentary about misophonia? So that was like 11 o'clock at night. I never went to sleep that night because I got 500 likes and well over 500 responses. And I
mm.
responded to every one of them. So I think it was like 7 o'clock in the morning where actually I finally got to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But people were like yearning for information, for something. And that said to me, this is worth pursuing.
That's amazing because the Facebook groups back then would not have, I mean, they're big now, but they wouldn't have been as big back then. So, I mean, that many hundreds of likes and comments is that
That was
says a
one night.
lot right there.
That
Yeah.
was, and it was
Yeah.
overnight. It was in the middle of the
Right.
night. It was one night. But that's all I needed was that little spark.
Mm-hmm.
But then as people got to know me and see that, I needed to gain credibility from the community, like most of all, because I knew
Yeah.
I was going to do a fundraiser through Indiegogo, which is like Kickstarter.
Right.
I knew I needed support from the community to make the film. So right away, I wanted to establish that I was a communicator, that I was a sufferer, and that I was like genuine and sincere and had integrity. And I was going to do a good job of not so much, I would say, representing misophonia in the most credible way possible.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be sensationalized like so many shows on TV
Still.
do,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
with with these montages of people like chewing and typing, and it's just when I see them, I just, besides the trigger things,
Yeah.
it's just the way that it's done. It's just so sensationalized. It makes us look all like crazy and
Yeah.
intolerant, and
Right.
it's so much more than chewing. And it's just, there's so many sounds that and they grow as you get older. But we can talk about
Mm-hmm.
that another time. But they seem to concentrate on the chewing. Like, and I once like went off like on a Facebook post, like misophonia like is not a disorder of like chewing
Right.
sounds.
Yeah.
Like if everybody just chewed like in the best way possible, would our misophonia go away? No.
No. Yeah.
It's just one little piece, one
Right.
little facet. It's the most common because eating is a social thing. It's also something you need to do to sustain life. So just we're around food, so that seems to be like the go-to thing. But so to go back to your original question, so I decided to do the documentary, but then all these people started to tell me how to do it, and I made myself just a little too accessible because I wanted input,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
realized I shouldn't have done that. And people were telling me, well, if you include that person, then I'm not going to be in it because like she's not credible and I don't like her, and you should
Right.
do this and don't include that. And all of a sudden I felt this is not my film anymore. And so I decided to take a month off. It was April of 2015 where I actually totally just put it aside. I did not even think about it. And I felt this huge weight lifted off of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I told the story before in another interview, and even at the premiere of the film, that I had insomnia one night, and I grabbed the Movie Maker magazine that I subscribed to. There was 5 of them on my night table. I just grabbed a random one, went downstairs to the living room couch, and I picked it up, and the front cover was "Can Filmmakers Save the World?" And it was all about awareness films.
Oh,
And I read it, and I just got goosebumps actually sitting
yeah,
here talking to you,
yeah,
because that changed everything. It brought the spark back, and like I couldn't. And the next morning, I was like, I'm doing this. And so I started like rounding up people, looking for people, because I had to make what's called a like a pitch trailer, a spec
right.
trailer to put on Indiegogo to attract people, to show them that I kind of had the goods, to make a film that would represent them well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I laid out $3,000 of my own. I found 6 people in the New York area, and I made like a mini version of what the documentary, would be, at least of what I envisioned it to be.
Right.
And so I did that, and and then I released it. Actually, I have the date written somewhere, but sometime in June, I actually released it, and my goal was $19,000. And at first, it was like coming in like really quickly, like 6,000, 7,000, and then it kind
Yeah.
of stalled, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh. But then, you know what the best part is? I had all these people advocating for me. Like they became my little mini salesman
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go out and promote the film. And so everybody, I think there was like 250 shares from my original post on my Facebook page. And it was just coming in from everywhere. And so we're really close. And I got 16,000. And then I actually met the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny. At the 11th hour, I actually wasn't sure I wanted to meet the goal, because if I did, it meant I had to commit.
Right.
And I give
Well,
I give 100% to everything I do. So it was kind of scary because I was in the middle of running my own business. Like I had
yeah.
clients, I had projects to do. This was like a major commitment. So
Mm,
so part of me was afraid for it to fail, and part of me was afraid that it would succeed.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That's awesome. And then once you hit that goal, at that point, had you kind of decided, like, because I'm sure now that you have people donating money to you, you probably got even more feedback coming in as to what it should be like. Had you kind of, were you mentally prepared to, like, no, I'm gonna do this the way I want. I want to do it the way I think it needs to be done. Were you like ready to go at that
Yeah, you
point?
know what? At that point, I was stronger, and I
Yeah.
also had a sense of who the players were, if you know what I mean by that. Who were the players in the miso world?
Oh
You
yes, yes.
know,
There are some
there's
strong
biggest
players. Yeah.
there's
A few.
basically 2 or 3
Yeah.
groups,
Yeah.
and there's actually some infighting there. There's a disagreement about
Yes.
approaches and treatments, and
Yep.
there's a lot there. And I realized early on that I did not want to get involved with any of them. At first, I was going to include treatments, but then I found everybody was calling me up, include me, include me, include me, and I was like, you know what? This is not going to be a treatment-based film at all,
Right.
because treatments could become outdated.
Mm-hmm.
You could find that it helps some, but it actually adversely affects others. So it wasn't about that. It was more about the emotionality, about the struggle of living, day to day life, with this bizarre
Yeah.
disorder, and just hearing people talk and just seeing their lives. And I thought that would be much more impactful and especially with trying to like depict what it's like. I was gonna have like all these little like dramatizations, and I was like, no, because you know what, everyone's experience is different, and if I put one out there, then the actual layman, or like loved ones or people who don't know anything about this will think that's how everybody reacts, and
Hmm.
that's not
Hmm.
true. There's no one size fits all with misophonia. Everybody handles it and reacts to it differently.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to put images, preconceived notions into people's minds per se. So I figured if people just talk and tell their stories, it'll never be outdated. Like
Yeah.
5 years from now, emotions will never become outdated. Where, treatment modalities, and they could, they could be proved that, they weren't helpful or they actually made it worse, like exposure therapy
Hmm.
or,
Hmm.
different types of treatments. So I just stayed away from it and just stuck to either facts or just emotion. And here we are 5 years later, really, and people are still interested in it. I just got an email from Israel 2 days ago. How can I buy your film? So I sent it, and she wrote back, "Thank you. I now know what I have. This is me."
Yeah.
So from Israel, but I get these letters from all over the world, and it's kind of cool that just something that like some little filmmaker in Long Branch, New Jersey had an idea, and it's kind of like all over the world people writing me.
Yeah.
It's
No,
it's a
that's
cool thing because I'm a very low key person. Like I
mhm.
don't like the spotlight per se. It was really a passion project, just like something. You know what? I'll throw it out there. I'll put it on YouTube. Maybe it'll help some people. And I had no clue that it would have such a long shelf life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I get letters, notes too from people around the world, and I think you're right. It's like we all have such a shared experience that that's more important right now at this early stage of research and treatment to kind of focus
Yes.
on that, just so people can. I want to say like my first priority is not even awareness to non-misophone people. I think misophones need to understand better what they've lived through because it's kind of
So
like
you know what?
yeah.
That's a great point. So when I made the film, I basically had four audiences in mind,
Hmm.
and it's hard enough to direct a film with one targeted audience. I
Yeah,
had four. So
right.
it was the sufferers directly. It was the people who had it but didn't know they had it, didn't know
Hmm.
what it was, and it's also our loved ones, the people in your inner circle, relationships, regardless of what type of relationship it is, was what
Hmm.
romantic, work, friendship, regardless, it impacts those relationships. And the last group of people I was targeted to was the non-believers, the people who think we're just making it up, or it's a
Right.
behavioral issue, or we're just intolerant. Because sometimes it seems to be selective. I was just telling a friend yesterday that there's some days where something is a trigger, and there's some days when it's not. And there's so many factors that go into that. And we always talk about, it's, lack of sleep, it's nutrition,
Stress and
it's
yeah.
stress. So many things come into play where some days my tolerance level is much higher. And some days, like the slightest little thing, and it's just exacerbated. And it's like being tortured at times,
Yeah.
and it sounds crazy. And I say to myself, like, this is crazy, but I literally cannot control it. I'm trying so hard. So what I
It's like keeping
try
the
best
Hulk
to do is to
inside.
be my own advocate.
Right.
Yeah, but I had to try to remove myself. Like I got better at speaking up.
Hmm.
It's very hard for me to say to somebody, like, what you're doing is affecting me.
Especially if you're a
It's
low key
hard for me.
person. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, based on how assertive you are and what
Yeah.
your personality type is, I'm kind of a low key. Uh, I'm assertive, but I'm not. I don't have an overly strong
Well, a lot of us,
personality.
yeah, most people I interview, they're kind of like, we don't want to, we feel bad being a burden on
Right.
other people, especially for something that
Yes,
we grew up. It was
exactly.
hammered. We hammered it into ourselves that this is our problem and we're crazy. And so that
Right.
quote unquote trauma has kind of like informed our style, I think.
Yep. I agree. I agree. But I got better, and as like the last person you interviewed said, humor plays a huge
Yeah.
role because you know what? You can actually diffuse a situation or a potential situation just by making like a joke about it.
Right.
However, the timing of that joke is very important.
Right. A lot of factors
In
again go into that, but
yes,
it's when executed properly, it can definitely help.
right in the middle of a meltdown, for lack of a better word, is not the time for the other person to
Right.
introduce humor. It has to come from me. So it's funny, just a really quick anecdotal story.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
few years ago, it was in the summer, and a friend had a watermelon, like it was all cut up, and all the sounds a watermelon makes
Yeah.
when you're all those wet mouthy sounds. And so I had like a CD on, and it was like blasting, and it was fine. The CD stopped, and all you heard was a cacophony of mouth sounds. And a friend of mine said, "Well, this is a misophonia nightmare." And it was so flawless. It was so perfect. Number one,
Yeah.
it it made me feel validated that he realized it was a situation that would affect me. That was number one.
Yeah.
It means so much when the people around you even make the slightest effort. And it's crazy, but it actually reduces the intensity of the reaction just
Yeah.
because people have a little bit of understanding, or if they'll do something to be like, like, I'm so sorry. Like, it's okay. It's when people have just a total lack of regard for some reason that magnifies the response.
I think your
That
brain is just, it
I was just gonna say,
doesn't assign threat. Yeah. Mhm.
which is why I think there's so much psych involved with
Right.
what's supposedly a neurological disorder. There's It starts out as neurological, but it then goes into the psych realm because once you start anticipating things, that means that like the other part of your brain is working because you're consciously thinking about something. Whereas like a misophonia reaction to a trigger is automatic. Like you're not
Yeah.
thinking about it. You're not saying, "Oh, that's somebody chewing. I should react now." It just happens.
Right. Right.
But when you see someone going to reach for a bag of chips, your mind is racing, your heart is racing because you know what's coming. And sometimes it's actually worse than the actual trigger.
I was gonna say the visual triggers. I'm assuming you've got them.
The
And
worst.
I forget, was that in the documentary as well? Had
You know
you?
what? So that's a great question. 3 or 4 people mentioned it. I didn't want to. Misophonia, as far as the sound part goes, is complicated enough and
Yeah.
confusing. I didn't want to overload the the viewer because if you don't have this, it's very hard to understand the visual aspect of it. But 4 people did mention it in passing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Then that's smart to kind of
But
focus on.
so it's
Yeah.
yeah, because it's just too much. I don't know. Sometimes people could just like shut down if
Right.
there's too much. But they're definitely connected. I know they call it, misokinesia,
Kinesia.
but
Yeah.
on it's what? It's all the same thing. It's one
Yeah.
thing because I have the same exact response, whether it's visual or auditory, the same exact response. So I know it. Like when people are, if I'm sitting next to somebody and they're shaking their leg, I'll just put my hand up,
Yeah.
and block my peripheral vision so I don't have to look at it. It's hard for me to watch people text sometimes, if their fingers are going really fast. I have to turn away.
Gotcha.
If
Yeah.
somebody's scratching, twirling their
Right.
hair, you know, even somebody chewing like in a car in front of me, like if I see them like in their mirror, I actually
Yeah.
have to turn away.
Yeah.
And it's not that I know I'm imagining what the sound is. It's watching their mouth move.
It's something about the movement. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. It's crazy. It's all so crazy. And, at first I thought it was kind of cool that I had this. You know what? When I first learned about it, I had this like entitlement, so to speak. I was like, oh, like I'm unique, like I'm special. I have this thing. This is kind of cool, But
How long
as
did that
time
last?
went on, I was just gonna say, and during the film, I was like, someone said, like, if you could be cured, like, would you want to? And I was like, no, like this is me. It's a part of me. And also, how can I get cured in the middle of doing like a film about it where I'm trying to get people to, have some like empathy and compassion and understanding? Like, I need to be one of the people in the film as well in order
Right.
to convey. So, so I did not want to be quote unquote cured. Yeah. Fast forward a few years. If you said, like, here's a pill, take this, and your misophonia will be gone tomorrow, I would take it in a second
Mm-hmm.
because it got progressively worse.
Even since the film, or just kind of.
And yes, well, you know what? It is since the film. And I had friends, actually, I'm going to use the word accuse
Mm-hmm.
me of that, doing the film and surrounding myself by so many other people and just immersing myself into
Mm-hmm.
that world has made me that much more sound sensitive. And I tried
Do you
to,
think that's
be a little
true?
introspective. I tried to be, introspective and think about that. And I don't think it's the case. Maybe, 20%, because, triggers can be contagious. And I thought the whole idea behind that was crazy when people
Right.
used to post about that. But if somebody does write, oh, yeah, the sound of this and this, somebody once wrote about, told me about bananas. It's like, huh, I never thought about that. Like a few weeks later, I was in a room with a friend, quiet room as can be,
Yeah.
and he was eating a banana. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to die right here. And so it kind of it plants that seed in your head, and then you almost become your own worst enemy because you tend to dwell on things,
Right.
where other people can block it out. Like if I'm in a store and I hear a sound, instead of trying to block it out, like I actually will tune into it, lock into it, and almost like torture myself. Like, and I have to almost like see where it's coming from. Like I want to
Yeah.
see like who's making that sound, and like how could they be
Yeah.
so rude and inconsiderate? When people drag their feet in public, and that's one of my worst triggers ever. And I just walk around like pick up your effing feet, like you lazy sack of what.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it makes you angry, and then you feel bad that you thought such negative thoughts, but in the moment they're there. Afterwards I calm down and I kind of like feel bad of the things that I wished on them. but but in the moment, what else do you have? I mean, you can't like physically attack somebody. You can't. It's hard for me. I couldn't walk up to a stranger and
Right.
ask them not to do something. Some people can. Maybe it's easier for women because they're like less likely to get punched in the face. I don't know. But I'm afraid that like if my face is very expressive. So if somebody's doing something, like it shows. And sometimes I mumble things under like my breath. And me, a friend once said to me, "Do you realize how loud you like talk like when you're
Oh.
upset?" And I go, "No, we're in an H&R Block, and all these people were talking, and I kept saying things. I would be like, shut up, please shut up, shut up, shut
Yeah.
up." And
Yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
"Jeff, do you know how loud you are?" And I go, "No, I guess not." But like, so I am afraid that someday there could be a confrontation. I'm afraid of that. So like I'm
Yeah. I
not
think about that
a
too.
big
If
guy.
my glare, yeah, if my glare was
Yeah,
misconstrued or something,
my dirty
or
look is
mumble
pretty
something.
dirty.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the miso glare is like.
the miso glare.
Um, I mean, resting bitch face has nothing on the miso glare. So
That's great. I mean, that phrase should be like patented. The miso glare trademark.
Maybe that should be a T-shirt. Yeah, don't. I'm not mad. It's just my miso glare, or maybe I'm mad. Well, we'll work on that.
Right.
Yeah. No, well, actually, I was just looking at your picture here, maybe and mine too. It might be a good reason to just have more facial hair, just to kind of like, just, be
Oh,
able
you
to
know what was
hide
the
it under.
biggest help? The pandemic was like a
Hmm.
blessing in disguise
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
actually disguise is a double entendre. But I actually could put a mask over my face and I could
yes,
talk all I wanted. I can make all the nasty looks, especially like food shopping.
yep,
It's the worst. And I would just curse people out and they couldn't even see. And it was a wonderful release.
yeah.
So that was one of the benefits.
No, I will be probably wearing. I like also not getting sick, so I might just kind of wear a mask for a while, especially if I'm going into a grocery store, maybe where or a place where I might be get
Yes.
triggered.
Right.
Anyways,
Right.
but how was so the pandemic in general, like being away from people? Like, was it overall? Like for some people, it was good at the beginning, but then um well, some of us kind of start to feel really claustrophobic, especially if we happen to be living with other people. I'm curious how kind of the past year and a half has been for you.
It actually, from a misophonia perspective, it didn't affect me
Mm,
because my living environment, it was a two-story townhouse,
mm,
and I had a roommate, but I had my own like large room upstairs, and I would tend to just kind of hang out up there and be in my own little world.
mm-hmm.
Just so it didn't really affect me as far as miso goes. It affected me as far as depression goes
Mm,
and loneliness.
mm-hmm.
But I found other ways of reaching out to people, like online.
Yeah,
People were more open to having conversations, and people needed each other. So I'm lucky enough to have a lot of online friends that we have like really deep talks. Like it's
yeah,
not just superficial. So I'm lucky I had that, and they're like from like all over the world, and so I tapped into that.
yeah. I
And
think a lot of people needed that.
yeah,
um
but
well,
not
maybe.
if somebody lives like in a home with like three or four people,
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how they did it. I, I could, because you know what? All people were doing was eating and watching television
Right,
or
right.
on their phones.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and those little games like on people's phones, like that drives me crazy, especially in like doctors' waiting rooms.
Mm.
Like people are just so, putting miso aside, people are inconsiderate. Not everybody, but
I
there's
think
so
on an
many
objective level,
people.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, they're, you know what, they're just unaware, and and they're not mindful. It's the word I like to use. I
Right.
am so mindful of my environment, and when I walk into a room, I try to adapt to that environment. So if it's like a high energy level, then I'll match it. If people seem to be quiet and more reserved, I match that as well. Some people don't have that.
No, I
They
think
don't
it's the
have that
opposite.
ability,
They kind of
to read the
extend
room,
their
so to speak. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
They kind
you
of
said a
like
couple of interesting
burst
things
into the
there.
room.
I feel like they've extended their living room into wherever they are. Like
Well
they've created,
said.
they've brought it up. But the other interesting thing you said, which I just forgot, and now it'll torture me. But yeah, well, yeah, about self-awareness. I mean, it comes up a lot where and I was thinking about it a little bit earlier when you said, would I give up miso? Obviously, a lot of us would give up miso, but um, a lot of people think that it's kind
It
of
made them a more
mm,
considerate person.
yeah, it made more considerate, but also they just kind of for a lot of people they're maybe more sensitive to reading the room better. So it's kind of like whatever heightened sense of awareness that they have, maybe miso is like a uh, overly active version of it, but they would never give up that over and like hypersensitivity. So some people have said I would probably keep my miso, but I think privately they would probably want to get rid of that small slice. But it's
It's
just a
definitely an
roundabout.
inner conflict.
Yeah, a roundabout way of saying people like certain aspects of this sensitivity, and they
In
definitely
some
see
ways,
when other people don't have it.
yeah, in some
So
ways, it made me a better person
Yeah.
a more considerate person, a more aware person. But in some ways, I think it also affected my personality negatively.
Hmm.
I think at times it actually made me an angrier person when I see how, I don't want to say careless, but how rude and inconsiderate people are in the public. Like now with cell phones, people will walk around a supermarket having these full-fledged,
Oh, yeah.
in-depth personal conversations like about
On
their
speaker.
entire lives. Yes. And they're FaceTiming while they're shopping, and there's
Oh,
kids
geez.
like, screaming in the background. I just, I, if somebody called me in the store, I would say, hi, like I'm food shopping. I'll call you when I get out.
Right.
I just would not subject people to that. And because it's a cell phone, I think people feel the need to speak even louder than normal, than if
Hmm.
the person was standing right next to you. So it's actually become like almost like an epidemic where people just have no like tact or couth
Do you think a lot of this
just
came up
as a way
recently?
of acting in public.
Yeah. Do you think some of a lot of, yeah, just whatever miso is related to just the that that kind of cliche of like over modernization, overpopulation, or do you think it's more of a, a phenomenon of the last couple hundred years?
You know what? I actually thought about this 2 days ago. So I'm smiling when you asked me that question because I'm trying to think what changed. So I realized I had whatever this was at 7 years old
Hmm.
because of a kid sniffling in class during a test. But then, like the next few years, I don't remember anything. And then as a teenager, the crunching started to affect
Yeah.
me. But I don't remember between 7 and 14. And I have an incredible memory that goes back to 4 years old. I don't remember miso affecting me between kind of 7 and 14. Although during dinner, I would always ask my parents to put the radio on. I knew that. I didn't know why per se, but I knew I just couldn't listen to knives and forks on a plate and people chewing.
Right.
So at 15 is when it kind of kicked in, and people crunching chips and things and was a problem. And and then at 19, I actually asked my stepmother not to put carrots in the salad because my grandfather was coming over and he was a
Mm.
loud eater. And she actually recalls, I asked her a year ago, and she actually recalls that. And that was like 40 years ago. She
Wow.
actually remembers that. And she didn't put them in. So that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But so the point of that is that when I hear stories now, and plus people I filmed of teenagers and younger children having such more like, intensive reactions than when I had as a kid, something else is at play there.
Mm.
It's not just standalone misophonia. I think there's outside influences, whether it's environmental, like all the stimulation that we're bombarded with every day, everywhere you go. There's some kind of advertisement, there's a phone, there's just stimulation everywhere, whether it's visual or auditory. There's almost like no resting place.
Right.
And when you have miso, you need some time to recoup. I
Yeah.
always tell people, I go, just give me 5 minutes of just like without doing that. Just 5 minutes is all I ask. And then we go into a quiet room, and then I can come out and I feel a little more recharged. I think so. I don't really use the word trigger a lot. I think the term is actually overused. So there's a times where it affects me. It's not a trigger unless I feel trapped and the sound is incessant. Like it just won't stop and I feel I can't get away. That is a true trigger. That's the true
Hmm.
meaning of the word trigger from me. Like a one-off sound, if someone just makes a sound, crunches a water bottle, which is brutal. Yeah,
Yeah.
it startles me, and I get startled very easily. I get scared easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
If someone that comes around the corner of a room, I go, ah, I get scared. I've always been like that. Don't go to a haunted house with me.
I was gonna say you're not one of the for the kids who like clowns, I would imagine,
Right,
or a
right,
haunted house.
right. So, so the word trigger has like different meanings to me. I think it's overused. Like when I read the forums, and so I mean, there's things that just affect me, but a true trigger is when my heart is racing. I have like an adrenaline rush,
You feel
and it's really
trapped, and
it's a
then the fight
feeling.
or flight kind of kicks in. Yeah.
It really is the best word. And when I was doing corporate videos, like the client would bring in like lunch in the
Yeah.
quietest conference room you could imagine, and invariably there was always chips on the plate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just easy food.
Yeah.
So I was doing a corporate video, and the waitress walks in with 8 plates. There's 8 people in the room, and they all have chips on them. And you could hear a pin drop in the room. There was just no noise at all. And right away, the anticipatory anxiety kicked in. I was like, what am I going to do? This is going to be torture because nobody knows about this. So what I do is I develop this thing where I take my palms and I press them underneath the table to release some of that adrenaline. And it
Mm.
actually started to help me. Sometimes I'll shake my legs under the table, but if I just press underneath my palms and press up, it helps. It turns out that one of my clients was there, and they were actually a supporter of the film. And so they actually brought it up and said, oh, by the way, Jeffrey's doing a documentary. And like, Jeff, why don't you tell us about it?
Tell that waitress about your
So
documentary.
just like trip her as she's walking in with a plate of shrimps. um, so I actually told them, but first of all, I go, first of all, I want to thank you all for eating those chips really quietly. Because you know what? You can actually go like crunch,
Right.
or you can actually just put it in your mouth
Yeah.
and close your mouth. And
Yep.
you still hear it, it's muffled. But again, it's about the effort. If you see somebody trying to make an effort, you almost like, you take a little bit like of an exhale. You're like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that makes a difference. And in this world, in the miso world, you take whatever little gifts you can get. And that's one
Yeah.
of them when you see somebody trying to make an effort. Because some people can just be, some people use it as a weapon.
Oh yeah.
And it's been said before that you have to be careful who you tell, because
Right.
it's your Achilles heel. And I've had it used as a weapon for me. Somebody once told me that I noticed that they were sniffling a lot. And so I walked away from them. A year later, that person admitted they did it on purpose because they wanted to look at their phone, and I was annoying them by being there talking.
Oh my God.
And I felt it like at the moment they did it. I was like, nah. And then they actually just voluntarily like told me so. And it hurt a lot
That's
because it was
terrible.
somebody I was in a relationship with, and someone who was there like right from the beginning of me finding out, going through the whole process of the documentary, and it was used against me. So
Wow.
you do have to be careful who you tell, but you have to trust somebody sometime.
I
But
guess.
you have to choose wisely. You have to think like, is this person, do they have an impact on my life
Yeah.
where it's worth taking that chance of telling them or not? It's a fine line, and I think you have to just do it case by case, person by person.
Yeah, you're right. Some people, if you're gonna only see them once, it's not worth it. But also, yeah, I mean, getting as you get older, you have maybe not as kind of hurtful as what you experienced, but a lot of people get exhausted by just like being made fun of or dismissed, and it's just like, all right, now it's like, do we want to roll the dice this time and kind of see what happens here, or
Right.
do we just try to live with it, let it slide?
I did an interview on a cable show, and I actually went there with an agenda. So it was a year after the film came out, and I was much stronger. personality wise. So in the beginning, I felt like I had to monitor everything I said because I felt like everybody was watching and I didn't want to like affect the actual film. Like I didn't want people to be upset at me and like boycott the film or not purchase it, or support me out of spite. So like I played everything like by the book and I was just kind of cordial and I kept a lot of thoughts to myself. A year after, I felt much more empowered. It's like, you know what? I have nothing to prove anymore. Like I delivered what I said I was going to. Like it was a success. It helped a lot of people. Hundreds of letters where, I've changed lives and it's like way beyond I ever thought I had the potential to do. But I went there with an agenda and I said to the host, I said, I would not have wasted or invested 4 years of my life if this wasn't real. I said, it cost me relationships, it cost me business. It affected my life like in many negative ways as well as, all the positives and the rewards. It was a very difficult time to do the film, but I did it. And like, I'm glad I did it. I have no regrets. When I look back, I shake my head and say, how the hell did I do that? Because like we filmed in 12 different states and there was only just two of us at any given moment. And so I wanted her to realize, like, and her audience to realize that for me to invest all of that, this really has to be life altering. This wasn't just like, a passion project I just did. It wasn't a home movie I just made for myself to throw on YouTube.
Right.
This was a much bigger investment of time, energy, sanity.
Yeah.
And
emotional
and
energy
finances too.
Yeah.
Everything. It took a toll, but I didn't realize how much until like it's when the dust settles. Like you ever work like a really long day and adrenaline keeps you going, but then once you sit down, you realize how tired you really are.
Yeah.
When the dust settled, I realized like what a toll it took on me. The whole process, because I pretty much did everything myself, from the campaign to the filming, but I had an assistant, to the editing, all the social media, all the emails. So there was a time where I had hundreds of emails and I would limit myself to responding to 25 a day. That's all I could do because I became a resource for people and all these people wanted to tell me their stories.
Yeah.
So, and because of who I am, I listened and I gave them my time and I responded. And one person wrote me and she goes, you know what, Jeff? You have a way of making a person feel that they're the only person you're replying to. And I thought that was really like it kind of captured, because each one was personal. Like there was no clone emails. Right, template. Exactly. No canned response. There was no canned response to each person.
Jeffrey
thank
Gould
you for sharing your story.
Your story.
Right.
If you would like a sticker, please.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is great. And so for me, responding to everybody, it opened up so many opportunities. And the first one was getting me on Nikki Sixx's show. So someone wrote to me and said, hi, I'm just wondering when the film's coming out. I want to share it with my boyfriend. And so we started like exchanging emails. He goes, oh, by the way, I'm the engineer on Nikki Sixx's talk show, and the co-host has misophonia. Would you be willing to be on the show? And that's how that came to be. 2 weeks later, I was on it. So you never know who's writing you.
Yeah.
And there's someone else, and I don't know if you heard him, Stephen Miller. He's one of the executive producers of the film, but he also started an organization, and I forgot the acronym, but he brought all these researchers together, and many of them who I know. And I think Zach, who you had on your show,
Zach Rosenthal,
he's actually part of that as well. as well as Dr. Kumar from the UK
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Michael Menino. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
if you
Oh yeah, I
spoke to
know
him.
Michael Marino.
Yeah. So he started this kind of was like consortium of doctors and research because his daughter has misophonia. And so he's been like a really a
Oh,
big
okay.
advocate of mine.
Yeah.
And so he happened to write me and he said, my daughter has miso, I'd like to help you in any way I can to make sure that your film sees the light of day. And I told them what I needed, and there was a check in the mail 2 days later.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been lucky. I gained the support and respect from a lot of well-respected, successful people.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot to me because it meant that I resonated and that they saw something genuine about me.
No, you come
And that
across
was probably the
genuine
most
whenever,
important thing.
yeah, whenever I've seen
Yeah.
your comments and messages on Facebook. I mean, they're not like, the usual one sentence replies. There, it's like, yeah,
Right.
you put a lot of thought into it, and then that I think that it's felt. Um,
There was a woman in Michigan, her daughter has it, and she wrote me and she was just so eloquent and so appreciative of what I've done that we actually started talking on the phone on a
mm,
regular basis.
mm-hmm.
And then she actually was making a trip to New Jersey, and she goes, "My husband and I want to meet you." So we actually met. We actually like met in a hotel lobby, and she brought me chocolate. She knows, and a T-shirt, and we had this like the most wonderful time. And so many relationships have been spawned from doing this film. And I say, "Quiet Please" is the gift that keeps on giving. To me,
Right.
in the sense of relationships and reward from seeing having somebody tag me in the support groups, saying, "Oh, here, watch this film, this really changed my life,
Yeah.
it really saved my relationship, it helped my parents understand." Well, one woman from Israel, she actually she was no longer had a relationship with her parents because they didn't believe her, and she showed them the film. And actually, I think I have her comment on the website, like under like testimonials or something. And she said, "You actually saved my relationship." And she went dot, 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 and more. So
Mm,
if you know what I'm saying
yeah.
there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, it's kind of a cool thing. I never thought that one person could make a difference. And not that I'm the only person who's advocating misophonia, but doing a film, like, it gave me a platform where that other people didn't have. Yeah, they put out an article, they have the misophonia convention, which is wonderful, but a film is just another way of reaching people globally.
Exactly. It's in channels where misophonia was never before.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly.
and that's important. I mean, yeah, we could do research articles, which are obviously super important because that will get eventually some treatment. But there's a very limited
Yeah.
distribution there. You were able to like get this into multiple media channels, and you did your interviews. Again, you're kind of getting it out there. So, yeah, I
And
think you
many
did a
people
lot.
found
Mhm.
out about
Yeah.
misophonia from the film,
Oh,
from
absolutely.
watching it. So that was my number one goal because since I went 50 years without knowing, I didn't want other people to have to go throughout their whole lives
Right.
thinking they were, crazy or it was just a quirk. Or I wanted them to know.
How did it you mentioned a little bit about your family earlier on. How did that kind of those relationships kind of evolve over time with your misophonia?
So early on, it didn't really affect anything. What's interesting though is that so my father has it as well,
Mm,
and I 100% believe that it's hereditary.
mm-hmm,
Just from my own family and from filming 40 different people and hearing their stories
mm-hmm.
and seeing multiple cases in one family, I personally believe, I'm not a doctor, a clinician, but I personally believe that it is. So when I was telling my father that, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to do this project, and I have this like sound thing. Whenever I hear this," and he goes, "Jeff, that's me." I said, yeah, but it's also like visual. Like if somebody's doing something, he goes, Jeff, that's me. Like he goes,
Wow.
I can't take if Marilyn, which is my stepmother, like is at the end of the ice cream and she's like scraping the bottom of the bowl to get that last bit out. He goes, it drives me crazy. And I remember as a kid, if she would file her nails, like with
Yeah.
like an emery board,
Yeah.
he would be like, would you please stop? I never connected the two
Wow.
in
All
all
that time.
those
Yeah.
years. Yeah, I didn't. And so it didn't really affect anything, but I always had to have, as a teenager, especially late teens,
Mm-hmm.
the music always had to be on.
Mm-hmm.
But they never fought me. They never challenged me about it. Like it was okay. It never caused an issue. In relationships in my early 20s, like it started to, like I had a girlfriend who was crunching an apple.
Yeah.
I'd be like, do you have to crunch that so loud? Funny because a week later I was crunching an apple and she started laughing. She goes, it's pretty funny how it bothers you when I do it and it doesn't bother you when you do it. And I'm like, that is really interesting, which made me think about it. Like, how come I can make these sounds, but other people can't? And that's something that's actually very confusing to people who are kind of new to this, but it's
Right.
also confusing to the people who are around us because
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like we're making it up. It sounds like we have control, that we're selective about what things
Yeah.
bother us. That's what it makes
Yeah.
it sound like, as opposed to being
Right.
an uncontrolled,
Right.
involuntary response.
Right.
The thing is that it's all about control. And I call it indirect control because I'm not a control freak at all. But, and I also use an analogy that you can't tickle yourself. Like if
Ah.
you try to tickle it, you can't because it's coming.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
someone else went to that same exact spot, like I would go crazy. Like if someone like started tickling my knee, like I'd be kicking and thrashing everywhere. But I'm doing it to myself right now and I feel nothing. So it's about control. And even like the radio. So if I'm in the car and I'm controlling the stereo, like and the volume and the music that's playing, like I will blast it so loud. If someone else does it, it's almost like an intrusion
Oh,
and
somebody else
it
blasted loud.
becomes like a
Yeah.
trick.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, or they're playing, and they're like, tap on the steering wheel and like banging, playing drums, and
I always thought it's because I'm
it's
so
like, or
passionate about music. I'm like that maybe that's what it was, but I think it is more than that,
yeah,
obviously.
it's about choice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about us wanting to hear what we want to hear, or not being in control of what we
Mm,
don't want to hear.
right.
That's what it is. Yeah, because I could chew and crunch like all I want. I don't trigger myself at all.
Right.
At all. But so you know what? People always associate it with human sounds. I was once I'm doing laundry and I took a shirt off a hanger and the hanger was like swinging back and forth, like on the pole.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what is that sound?
Yeah.
And it was the papers rubbing the hangers, like when you buy it,
Oh
rubbing
yeah.
together.
Right.
And I grabbed it really quick and I stopped it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, that was awful. So it's not just people,
No, no,
but
obviously, yeah.
what's really interesting? If I think a sound I hear is coming from a person, it's a trigger. There are times where I thought I heard like a sniffle or someone dragging their feet, but it was actually like a machine or it was
Mm.
something else.
Mm-hmm.
It totally
Took the edge off.
de-escalated.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is, it's interesting. It's just, food for thought that once we get in our head that someone is making that sound, like that's it. They're condemned for life.
Yeah. It's like
They're
that threat thing. It's like
persecuted.
there is free will behind that sound. And it makes it much worse.
Exactly. But if it was just like, like a fan kicked on, or it was just some kind of, machine sound or the wind blowing, it totally changes your reaction.
Right. Right. what does your dad think now? I mean, when he found out what it was he just like, oh, that's me? Or was it like, wow, kind of like for us, it's kind of like a revelation because his generation,
He,
it's very much a
yeah,
suck
he's
it up,
85.
don't, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was kind of relieved. It actually it bonded us
Ah,
like for a
okay.
while.
Yeah.
It was actually a bond because he could tell me things. And once I was driving to the airport, it was my stepmother was in the back seat. My father was driving me, and she brought a bag of raw broccoli in the car. And she was in the back seat, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to go well. And she was crunching and crunching. I actually found myself leaning forward so much that I was actually touching the dashboard. My father goes, why are you sitting like that? And I said, I
Mm,
go, never mind. Don't worry about it. Because I don't like to make waves. I
right.
go, don't worry about it. And he goes, is it because of her chewing? And I said, yes. And he's like, why are you crunching so loud? And she actually got defensive at both of us
Yeah.
and said something not too kind. And that was right in the thick of me doing the film,
Yeah.
where that, I had their support, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But nobody likes to be targeted or told that what they're doing is offensive. It's hard. You know what? I've been on the receiving end. I've been told that I've triggered people. So,
Mm,
no, misophones, for lack of a better term, they don't realize how noisy they are. So
mm-hmm.
while filming 40 people, I can't tell you how unaware most misophones are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
true.
as I film people, I gave out chocolate bars, with like, the logo of the film on it. That was my like little thank you. I gave
Mm.
chocolate bars to everybody who I filmed. And in a quiet room, this girl crunched that chocolate bar like she was never going to eat again the rest of her life. And I, I was just like aghast. Like, really? Another time I went out to dinner with somebody who worked on the film with me. Out of all the things you could order at a restaurant, she ordered crunchy tacos. Like, really? Like, so people think, I have all these like posts where we should all just like go live on an island together. I'm
Right.
like, no, bad idea. Because it's really hard to monitor your sounds. But I think it's really important for people to be in that environment so they can see what the pressure they put on others, and by constantly monitoring, their families, their spouses, whatever, whoever, their sounds. It is hard. It's like being in the library and knowing that you're not supposed to laugh. It makes you want to laugh. It's because you're being like controlled. And when somebody is
Right.
monitoring everything you do, you're more likely to make sounds. And it's an awful way to live. And I have a saying that uh, nobody can be 100% mindful 100% of the time. Like, you can't. You can't monitor every single action and thing that you do. And it feels like by reading the forums that people expect people to,
I
not only
think,
their family, but strangers.
yeah.
Like, how could they don't even, most people who have this don't even know it's a thing. How could they expect the rest of the world to
Right.
know it's a thing? But regardless, people still have to live their lives. Like, it's up to us to be self advocates. So I have headphones with me all the time, earbuds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will not go food shopping without earbuds listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't.
Or restaurants, maybe.
Restaurants are okay with me because it,
Okay.
it becomes like a white noise.
White noise in the background. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's a
becomes
good
like,
tip.
a cacophony, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's okay. It's mostly like sitting on the couch, like watching TV with somebody who's like eating popcorn and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, that's
Right.
that's a little rough. But it's
Gotcha.
important to just like let people live, but also let them know like what affects you. I think it's okay to make effort. Like if somebody was handicapped, had a physical disability, like in your home, like you would go out of your way to try to help them. Like if they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't reach something from the top
Mm-hmm.
cabinet, like you would help them. If they needed help getting up the stairs, you would help them. But people don't see like mental health issues or disorders. They don't really validate them. I used to always say that, like, if you're not, with your arm, like, bleeding, and hanging off, like, people don't take you seriously. They have to see something visibly in order
Right.
to take you seriously. And that's why mental health isn't really taken seriously, or people aren't validated,
Right.
with
And
those issues.
even on the mental health curve, I think misophonia is far lower
Oh,
than
right.
most others. I mean, it's taken a lot to get a lot of mental health stuff noticed, and autism is now talked
Exactly.
about a lot. But misophonia,
Yeah.
we're very early in that cycle.
So
cycle.
do you know like how many like haters there are? So when I post my trailer, somebody actually posted it to Reddit and it got 50,000 views in one day.
Wow.
I looked at the counts. I did like a double take and it was because of Reddit. But in between all the positive comments, somebody wrote, I wish all of you would die so we could stop hearing you complain about the noises we make. So people have some strong opinions.
Some of it, I think, that is just people practicing their amateur snark. Because I mean, some of it
Like the
is
YouTube
probably,
mentality.
yeah.
People just love to hate.
They would never. A lot of those people, I would never dare. Not that and
They
set
hide
aside the
behind the
fact that,
internet.
yeah, set aside the fact that if they said it to our face, we would obviously take care of them. But
Right.
but but I think a lot of that is just, yeah, it's just typed. You would never hear a lot of that
Right.
out loud.
Right. And
But
ignorance.
it could still hurt if you're making a film and putting all that
Right.
sweat behind it.
Although, you know what? Doing the film gave me a much thicker skin.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
Things, because I'm a sensitive person in general, but compared to like 5 years ago, I'm much stronger.
yeah,
Because you know what? When you put a body of work out there, you leave yourself open.
yeah.
And I learned that, and I had so many positive comments, but every once in a while there'd be like a few like negative ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, ouch. But then I'm like, I'm okay. Because when I watch a film, I critique it,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's by a famous director, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that was great. But I wish they didn't, do this, and
Mm-hmm.
this. So you can't please everybody. But as long as I please, the masses,
Yeah,
and as long as I can live with myself and I have a sense of pride that
yeah,
I accomplished what I set out to do. And that's actually a lot more than most people could say. Like a lot of people will have an idea, but following through it's difficult.
yeah,
And that's the one thing like I'm really proud of myself for, because I could have easily just gone along my merry way running my video production
yeah.
business. I was doing well. I was satisfied,
You could have been
complete.
like everybody else, like dismissed, like not to make a big deal out of
Because you know what?
misophonia. Yeah,
I was one of those people who'll be like, that other person could do
we'll
it.
do it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to make a difference. Someone else will do it. That was me my whole life. For some reason, in this case, I realized that I couldn't change everybody's perspective. All I wanted to do was start the conversation.
all right.
That was my only goal. I mean, some people wrote and said, oh, you didn't include enough medical treatment. Like, I'm okay with that. Some people wrote me and said the music triggered them. Some people wrote that certain voices triggered them.
Yeah,
And at one point that would have bothered me. But, and actually, I actually used to reply to some of those like negative emails and say, well, I go, number one, the film wasn't made for you, and it's not about you. It's about the bigger picture.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about getting the message out there
yeah,
and raising awareness and helping others. I go, it's not about your personal triggers. I understand them. I said, trust me, sniffling is my worst. She went off on how I could have start the trailer with a woman crying and sniffling. But her comment was so impactful, it outweighed the possibility of triggering somebody. And really only a handful of people like had an issue with it. But what she said, how this affects every aspect of my life was powerful. And that was the first line of the trailer. But she was crying and sniffling.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, even misophones, sometimes forget that it affects every aspect of our lives. So that's an important message for everyone to hear.
Right. But some people just made it about
the sniffling, yeah.
And they actually had to hit the stop button and couldn't watch it. Another person wrote and said, there was one voice in there, their voice was like raspy, and I couldn't watch the film. But they post it, and then other people see it, and then it started this whole thread of like, oh man, can I watch this? Like, is it full of triggers? What's nice is that I've reached a point where I don't even have to defend myself anymore.
Right.
There's a whole arsenal of people who the film has helped. They do it for me. And that's actually so much more powerful than me interjecting and coming across as defensive, because they're hearing it from other people. And other people said there's no triggers. The director went out of his way. He's a sufferer himself. He went out of his way not to include gratuitous triggers.
Right.
And that's all I can control, are the gratuitous ones.
Right.
If someone has a personal one about someone's voice, and I'm affected by voices as well. So I get it. But you can't control if a certain voice is going to affect a person. It can't be about that. It has to be about the much bigger picture. And that was my goal. And I stand by it.
Yeah.
One person said, can you take out the drums? One person actually wrote me, saying, can you take out the drums or the string sounds, like at 2 minutes and 33 seconds, like really like triggered me. It was like really, like you felt the need like to write me, take a part of your day to tell me that I should take the strings out of the soundtrack. So
there's all it's a crazy issue. It affects people in so many different ways.
Well, there's so many different personalities out there too, and so I actually, what I say to myself, that I actually kind of came out of it relatively unscathed. I had like a handful of issues with people like over the past 5 years, but for the most part, like I've done okay. It's been positive. Like the relationships have been positive. Comments have been positive. Just a few.
Yeah. And
I'm
so
good with that.
Yeah, no, you absolutely should be. So maybe, as we're about an hour and a half in, maybe we should start to kind of like wind down. I'm sure people would be interested to hear kind of what have you been doing in the past few years since the documentary.
So actually, since Quiet Please, it actually led to 4 other awareness videos / films. It's funny, the first one I did after Quiet Please was about cluster headaches. While filming these people, telling me their stories, I realized that I was mentally shot. After listening to 40 people talking about their misophonia and how it affects their lives, because I'm an empath, so I feel I take on everybody's pain.
Yeah.
And so while I was filming these people, I realized, wow, I'm not enjoying this. I actually can't even process any more pain from other people. And so I realized it affected me in a negative way. And so I did that. And then I did one about hyperacusis. It's like misophonia's cousin.
Right. Yeah.
Distant cousin.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people get them confused.
Yeah.
So I actually did one about that.
These are all
actually did one
on,
for the
on
opposite.
YouTube, or are they being distributed some other way?
YouTube. They were used as fundraisers for these different organizations.
Right.
The hyperacusis one actually got the subject on the Today Show.
Oh, wow.
Because of the video that I did. So she got to go on the Today Show. And then I did one about the opposite, about hearing impaired people. So it was very interesting to do something about the exact opposite of misophonia.
Yeah.
It's about people who couldn't hear.
Right.
Yeah. So many people who have miso just, kind of offhandedly say, I wish I was deaf.
Right.
I wouldn't have to deal with this. So, it's one of those things where be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Because there's a lot of nice sounds in this world. And people are kind of like narrow-minded. I know it's just like a knee-jerk reaction to say that when you're in the moment. I'd rather be deaf, but I wouldn't. The sound of the ocean. I mean, there's so many wonderful music. There's so many wonderful sounds in the world. And so I actually separate them as those are sounds. And I refer to like the triggers as noise. Because to me, noise has a more negative connotation where sound can be pleasant. That's how I kind of separate them myself. So it was interesting doing a film about people who can't hear. And the research that's going into, trying to help them hear. And so it came from two different spectrums. But after a while, I felt like I just became like the awareness guy. Right. And in a way, I was proud of the title.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But in a way, I felt like I was kind of pigeonholed, which, nice segue here, which led to me wanting to do the documentary about chocolate.
I was gonna say one way to cope is to just eat some nice sweets.
I went from doing a film about 40 people.
Yeah.
And basically, at the most, I spent 3 days with somebody. Most of the time, it was an afternoon. So that included the interview and supporting B-roll. I mostly had 4 hours with each person. But occasionally, like the artist, Jessica, that we filmed in South Carolina, which is my favorite segment of the film. We actually went there twice. So we spent about 4 or 5 days there. And the Converse College gave us carte blanche to walk around, pretty much shoot, do anything we wanted to. So we actually filmed there till 3 o'clock in the morning one night. And then took a plane out at 8 o'clock in the morning. That was kind of fun. But, So
you
at the end of it all,
I
knew I wanted to do a film about one person. I wanted to get inside somebody's head, like what makes them tick, and their passion. And I wanted to be something so removed from awareness to show that I was capable of doing, something so different. Plus, of course, I have an interest in it, and I love chocolate and the process. But so after planning that and running a campaign, and I actually was able to raise money again to do a pitch trailer, it actually didn't come to fruition because the person I chose wasn't ready to be in the spotlight. And I was going to spotlight them. And he actually wrote me and he goes, "You know what? It's not me." And I said, "Well, if you're not ready to be in the spotlight, like this isn't for you."
Right.
Because that's what it's all about.
Right. And you are the awareness guy, so it would be awareness.
So it was actually to raise awareness about what's called craft chocolate.
Yeah.
It's a higher end chocolate. It's artisan, it's handmade, small batch. And I became a fan of it, an advocate of it. And I wanted to promote that. And this person was part of that world. Plus, he was a pastry chef and just a regular chocolatier in general. And he had the perfect environment. It was this really cool cafe up in Provincetown. It would have been great, but he wasn't ready. And everything I suggested was kind of like a fight. And so I said, I go on pulling the project. I don't regret my decision. I regret that the project just never came to fruition.
Yeah.
And since then, I haven't even thought about doing another film. At one point, I thought about doing little shorts,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like 5-minute little micro shorts about interesting people, and
Yeah.
making a YouTube channel and just putting them up there on YouTube.
Yeah.
But then life kind of got in the way, and I just got involved back into my business, and then the pandemic hit, and
Oh, right. Then you can't really be around other people for a while.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in a place now where I'm in reinventing myself. I recently
Yeah.
moved to Ohio because I was in a long
Oh,
distance relationship,
okay.
and so it was actually going well. So I decided to take the leap. At at 61 years old, I moved my life 500 miles away, and so I'm living a very different life. But so I'm happy in that regard. But I'm reinventing myself as far as like
Yeah.
career goes. I'm not sure where I want to be career wise at this point. I'm waiting for the spark to kind of come back.
Yeah.
The pandemic, it I took a hit with it.
Right.
So
Right.
like I'm slowly coming back. But at this point, I think I actually want to work for an in-house production company.
Mm-hmm.
And after 30 years of running my own business, plus doing the documentary in between that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready for something different where like I'm not the sole person who's
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was great. I'm grateful for it. I, it was very rewarding. I've met amazing people, accomplished more than I set out to.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time for something different.
Yeah. No, that's fair. It sounds like a good time to reinvent yourself. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people post pandemic or post 2020 as well. Not everything that happened last year.
Yeah,
Want to
absolutely.
change of scenery. So,
Right. But the film, it's still alive.
oh yeah,
And that
absolutely.
kind of amazes me that I still get emails.
Yeah,
So I
it's
actually had so
timeless.
many requests for DVDs. Timeless is the perfect word. I got so many requests for DVDs that I actually placed an order for them yesterday. And actually last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, put the links back up on the website so they
Mm-hmm.
can now actually be ordered again. They were
Mm-hmm.
off for about 6 months. I took the links down. So the links are back up there again to order DVDs, both domestically or internationally. So that was kind of exciting that there was interest. So streaming is great. There's something about handing a DVD, something that's tangible
Yeah.
to somebody, that has a nice cover. You can see, like, the packaging was done well. I think it adds credibility to the disorder, to the subject at hand, as opposed to, oh yeah, go watch it on a link, go on Amazon and watch that link, which, people always have something else to do and they won't necessarily go do that. You know,
Yeah.
if
Right.
you email them a link, maybe they will, but if you hand somebody a disc, I think they're a little more accountable
Mm-hmm.
to watch it. Again, plus it's the credibility factor. Because it means that the subject was interesting enough or needed enough that somebody actually made a DVD about it.
Right. Right.
Whereas, YouTube, anyone could just make something and throw it up on YouTube. This went a step further, and it looks professional in its presentation. Plus, you can also give it to like a therapist. You can give it to other clinicians. Like so many people have brought their DVD to their therapist because they
Mm-hmm.
never heard of it before. And then that therapist watched it. Now, if that therapist has a new, and they exhibit symptoms or talk about things not related, they could say, I know what you have.
It's
So
huge.
it's
Yeah.
actually educating people almost like one by one, like exponentially.
Right.
And you never know who's going to see it, who it's going to get passed on to.
Right.
I went for a medical procedure 2 weeks ago. I was in the waiting room and a woman was clicking her sanitizer bottle, the cap, open,
Yeah.
close, open, close. And those are all like clicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I counted 50 times. I had a friend with me who does not have miso, And he actually texted me. He goes, I have to do deep breathing exercises because I can't take it. And that's a person who doesn't even have it. But this woman was totally unaware that she was
Yeah.
doing this. So the nurse calls me in and she goes, okay, I'm going to take your blood pressure. And I go, just so you know, it may be high. I go, there's a woman in the waiting room. And I had my own sanitizer bottle. So I took it out and I did it for her.
Right.
I go, you probably never heard of it, but I have this thing called misophonia. She goes, oh, I heard of it and I have it. I go, really? Like my
Yeah.
whole face lit up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so nice to meet somebody else who, has this. And she goes, yeah. She goes, my husband like is constantly chewing gum and I can't take it, but otherwise he's like pretty good about it. But
Yeah.
like, what are the chances that I would even say it to somebody?
Right.
And
Right.
have her be, and I even posted a story like on Quiet Please like a year ago. I was filming in a library and a woman goes like, what are you doing? I'm setting up for a Chamber of Commerce event. And she goes, what else have you done? I said, oh, I did a documentary. She goes, what about? She kept pushing. She's very inquisitive. She was a librarian. I said, oh, it's about the sound sensitivity called misophonia. And I explained it. And she just stared at me. She goes, do you mean like chewing sounds?
But she didn't make the sound.
Like
She just
knives
said,
and a
yeah.
fork?
Yeah.
Yeah, she just said it. And I go, yeah, how do you know that? She goes, our son has it. He's been coming to, he was a late teen. He's been coming to us, telling us like all these things affect him, that he can't have dinner with us. She goes, that's it. That's what he has. So you just never know who you're talking to and who you may help. So it's important to talk about it. And actually, last night I was at work and I was assistant manager. And I said I would come in on Friday, but I'm doing a podcast. And it's right in the middle of the day. So I'll just come in on Monday and finish up what I have to do. He goes, oh, what are you doing it on? So oh, it's a sound disorder thing. He goes, misophonia? And I go, you effing heard of it? I was so excited.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I know. Like, he goes, I know a little about a lot of different things. He goes, that's that chewing thing. And see, everyone automatically just goes right to the chewing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like he knew. And I said, I'm so impressed. He goes, send me a link. So you just never know. So he might watch it, even though it doesn't affect him.
Yeah.
But one day, I don't know, maybe he can meet somebody and say, oh, I know what you have. Because that's how I found out about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I found out about it. So it's important to talk.
Oh, absolutely. So Jeff, yeah, I know we can talk for even more, many more hours. Is there? Well, first of all, before I want to ask you, if there's any like last words you want to say. But first, and I just want to say thank you, obviously, for doing the documentary. I mean, I bought the DVD. I couldn't watch it in one go, not because of the sounds. It was just so emotional. I had to stop like 3 times before I got.
You know what?
So, yeah,
I get that from so many people, but so many people said I bought it, but I just kept it in a drawer like for 6 months. I couldn't bring myself to watch it. But when they did, they regretted that they waited so long. Like, some people, just cry through it.
Yep.
So for me, I'm kind of jaded because I edited it. So I watched some of these scenes 100 times in a row, and they just lose their effect after a few times. But when I watch it, there's one section that still gets me, and that's when people realize that there's a name for it, because it brings me back to when I first heard of that. It's such a great feeling to know you're not alone.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else you want to say? This has been a fantastic conversation. Anything else you want to say to your legions of fans?
I think mostly I appreciate the support. Like, it's such a cool thing just to go on Facebook and say, so and so tagged you, in the Misophonia support group. Like, and I'll go there and I just read like all these like positive comments. It was like, this conversation is happening, like, and I'm not even involved in it.
Right.
It's weird for just a low-key person
Yeah.
who's never wanted to be in the spotlight. It's not like I'm more comfortable with it now, but it's cool. So you know what? It gives me a little thrill for a minute or two, and then I just go on with my life. I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, I had a certain amount of self-importance. When I first did this,
You were
I was
getting
like,
cocaine
oh,
and
I'm going to
drinks and
save the
just
miso
partying
world.
and
Right. Like, I just like thought I was it. But like after a month, I got myself in check and realized, you didn't find the cure for cancer. So,
well, you
get
still had
get
a
a
big
grip on
impact.
yourself.
Yeah. That's funny.
But you know what? I'd rather be humble than the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I
Well, yeah.
appreciate one thing I want to say is that I appreciate the ongoing support and people still write me all the time, like thanking me
Yeah.
and
Well, we'll
even on a
have,
personal level,
yeah.
I'm just grateful for all the relationships.
Yeah. I'll have all those in case people, for some reason, have not, don't have links or have heard of the movie. I'll definitely have everything in the show notes. And people will hopefully continue to contact you. I'm sure they will. But yeah, thanks again for everything you've done and coming on. And I'm glad to finally have you on the show. This has been fascinating conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and you know what? You're a pleasure as well. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoy just the way you converse.
Yeah, thank you. And you're in
So
Ohio now, and I'm
yeah,
in Minnesota, so it's a little bit closer. Maybe one day I'll drive through or something, or go through, and we can hang out quietly.
you know what? That's been the best part. Oh, so actually, there's somebody who I actually filmed
Yeah.
the documentary, but I end up cutting them out. But ironically, they live 20 minutes from me. And so far, we met twice for ice cream.
Cool.
Actually, one was last weekend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we remain friends. So the relationships will go on and on.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the best part.
Thank you, Jeffrey. What an absolute treat. Not sure what else to say. Thank you for everything you've done for us, and I hope this podcast can somehow help carry the flame. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier to just send a message on Instagram at misophoniapodcast or Facebook, or on Twitter. We're actually Misophonia Show. You can support the show financially if you want at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.